concept that has been around a long time throughout history. Who would argue with it? In the editorial Hate Speech on Facebook, the editorial board of the New York Times bases their claims on the value of equality and justice for women by examining misogynistic pages on Facebook and Facebook's delayed response to removing this type of content. I will discuss that while equality and justice for women is certainly a noble cause, how it is applied in this editorial is a bit narrow-minded. The main claim of this editorial is that sexism is a deeply entrenched problem that society has to battle collectively because individual voices most often go unheeded. This is a claim of policy because it states an action that we must take. This editorial deals with the following ethical issues: value of women, the wrongness of hate speech against women, how companies should respond to hate speech posted on their websites, and how individuals cannot create change and that it needs to be collective. The ethical perspective of this editorial centers around the concept of justice and fairness. First, it talks about justice and fairness between men and women. It discusses the injustice of misogynistic Facebook pages, Facebook's removal of some pages, such as breastfeeding, but not others, such as advocating rape. And it also states that the problem in technology and internet-based companies is because it's run by men. It states, the company's slow response may be indicative of a deeper problem in technology and internet-based companies, most of them primarily run by men. It also discusses justice and fairness between all targeted social groups and how hate speech towards them is handled. The article also states how Facebook handles hate speech better when it's targeted towards other groups, such as religious groups. This gives the implication that Facebook cares more about the targeting of particular groups rather than women in general. It also discusses justice and fairness between individuals and corporations. It discusses how individual voices have not been heard and how it took a social media campaign complete with emails, petitions, loss of Facebook advertisers to get a public response from the company. This is also discussing the implied value that to get corporations to change, we must battle collectively and impact them monetarily. This editorial uses the value of justice and fairness for women, but does not apply this ethical perspective to all parties involved in this controversy. The ethical perspective is of justice and fairness. First, justice and fairness between men and women. The misogynistic Facebook pages depict hateful and sometimes violent images, which is of course unjust and unfair to women. However, it is also unjust and unfair to characterize this controversy as a problem that exists because most internet-based and technology companies are run by men. These offensive pages exist for a multitude of reasons, and not because most administrators and executives at Facebook are men who are just choosing not to remove these pages, which is what the article implies. Also, I'll discuss justice and fairness for free speech. According to an article in the Mint Free Press, Facebook finds itself in a quandary. The company wants to remain open and permit content from its users, including off-color comments and jokes. But on the other extreme, Facebook must be careful not to alienate its patrons. The evidence supports that Facebook's slow removal of offensive content is not about internal sexism in the company. First, there's a problem with recognizing offensive content. One of the claims in the social media campaign against Facebook is that art depicting nude women and pages about breastfeeding were removed and banned as well. With the millions of pages out there, it is difficult to find a way to systematically remove offensive content. One parameter in their effort to do so was the removal of female nudity, which would cause misogynistic pages as well as artistic pages to remove alike. Second, the concept of free speech versus removable hate speech. Comedians often use sexism, racism, etc. in jokes, and many of these mildly offensive pages consider themselves to be satire. For many people, it's a matter of opinion when a joke crosses the line to become offensive. In addition, it's up to each individual user what is considered offensive. Misogyny is of course offensive, but some of these artistic pages depicting nude females might be considered offensive by some people. Thirdly, keeping up with new content. There are more users than employees in Facebook. Facebook admitted that many of these offensive pages were not removed because they had not been evaluated, or they had been evaluated with outdated criteria. Facebook has millions and millions of pages and only a few thousand employees. In fact, there are roughly 250,000 users for every Facebook employee. Charles Palmer, the executive director for the Center of Advanced Entertainment and Learning Technologies at Harrisburg University of Science and Technology, stated that identifying and removing hateful speech and images is a manual process, and it can't be done quick enough for the general public. Facebook is relying on the public to report inappropriate images, but that is a slow and tedious process. In conclusion, this editorial makes a great argument about how social media has been inundated with offensive content and how much of it is directed towards women, complete with examples. It also does a good job of discussing the difficulty of creating change in big corporations and the effectiveness of organized campaigns in generating this change. However, when an editorial is written discussing sexism on the internet and contains a claim that states that the problem is due to the fact that these internet-based companies are primarily run by men, I think that the editorial is undermining its own credibility by making a statement that is in direct violation of the ethics it's trying to promote. You can't argue against sexism towards women and then make a sexist statement towards men.